Block Ness. This is a game where players control giant lake-based snakes, and these snakes have a very clear objective in life. They want to stretch out. They want to become as long as possible. So players during the game will add segments of their snake to the board, and the player who is able to place the most segments on the board at the end of the game wins the game. There are some tiebreakers, but your general idea is you want your snake to be longer than anybody else's snake. So the game it has a theme, which is just snakes, but in essence it is an abstract game. It has the feel of those classic abstract games. The box of the game is used for storage, of course, otherwise why the heck would you have a box? But it is also used as the base to place the pegboard that represents the play area. With 2 players, you only use the darkest area of the board, and then you got 3 and 4 players, the board becomes bigger. Each player has a supply of snake body parts, and so they have different length, different size, and also different heights, which is very important, as you will see. Each player has a starting snake, and they're slightly different from one another, and the starting snakes all have a starting segment plus a head piece, a butt, a tail piece, and a head piece. And simply to start the game, you place those starting snakes on the board. Then players will take turns adding segments from their supply to the board. To take a turn, you take a segment and you add it. That's simple. When you're adding a segment, it needs to be added next to the tail or next to the head, in one of the 3 holes directly adjacent to that extremity. So right now I could place a tail piece in one of these parts here, or here next to the head. And when you place the new segment, simply then you move the head or the tail to the end of the new segment. Say, for example, I could place this one here again, or here, or back there, and also the orientation. As long as it's not diagonal, the orientation I can choose also, as long as it doesn't go out of the allowed play area, so that would not be okay. You can even say I start from here and I go around my own body like that. That would be allowed, and that's where my tail goes now, I think. And then the other player takes their turn and they decide, for example, to add that. So we're expanding the tail side. And then I decide the next turn that I want to do that. Now, a couple of rules. You cannot move directly, you cannot place a piece directly over someone's head or tail, because that is rude. So that's a way to block the expansion of your opponent by cleverly placing the head or tail of your snake. Also, you cannot go under anybody, but it's okay to go over. Say, for example, here now, orange player wants to extend that segment there with the tail, they could do that. Yes, they could. That would be legal because they're going above that one without touching it. Sometimes the game component makes it look like it's physically possible for 2 pieces to go over each other, although they are of the same height. Say, for example, maybe these two are the same height, but since I'm putting it here, exploiting that segment there, it looks like it goes. So sometimes the pieces will physically fit, but it's still not allowed to do it unless the piece that you're adding is physically taller than the piece that you're going over. Really, this is the general idea. Don't go over someone's head or tail. Don't go under any segment, anybody's segment, including yours. And you continue like this. You continue like this until a player won't be able to add any more segments. As you can see, the options are reduced after a while. For example, if I want to grow this snake's head, now I only have those 2 holes left because that one has been used that way. And so suppose I do that, which would be probably a bad move, because now my head only has one area where it can go. That hole is taken, that hole is taken, only that one. And so if my opponent was now able to place something there, then that head is stuck, I would be able only to grow my snake from the tail, and so on and so forth. So this is the general idea. This is how you play block Ness. Continue until all pieces have been assigned to the board, or until everybody's stuck, and at that point the player who has the fewest remaining pieces is declared the winner. In case there's a tie for that, which is very, 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 very common, it's probably the most common game ending I've seen actually, then the winner is the player who has the head of the snake in the tallest place. So in this case, green would win because green's head is higher than orange head. And this produces a couple of interesting ideas, interesting little situations here and there, because that means that early on you will want to get rid of your low pieces. So you're saving your tall pieces for later when you need to get over your opponent's pieces, and also when you want your final configuration to be with the head as high as possible. This, however, you don't have to always do it that way, because you can see an opportunity in which by placing a tall piece early on, then you're able to perfectly and completely box somebody in, which is a big advantage. Generally speaking, this is a very simple game. And initially, when I started playing it, it felt kind of totally random. That made it pretty trivial and not particularly interesting. I stuck playing with the game, though, for the very simple reason that my daughters like it very much. I played it with my daughters only. They are 8 and 10 respectively, and I played it sometimes with just one of them. So I play with 2 players, and sometimes with both of them, so 3 players. I have not played with 4 just yet. And simply because I love seeing them having a good time with this game. I kept playing it, and I started seeing a couple of more elements here, a couple of extra wrinkles that made it more interesting. And so, for example, not all holes on the pegboard are born equal, which may seem at the beginning, I mean, feel like, whatever, I'm just gonna place randomly. But of course, certain locations are a lot more dangerous than others, because if you place in a corner here, for example, this is where the head or the tail goes, then you only have one legal place to go, which is this one, because these are the 2 are out of the play area. If you put in one of these corners or whatever play area you're using. And that means if you do that and someone immediately sees the opportunity and places a piece there, then again, that extremity is done for. But you have another one. So it's not that a single mistake will give you immediate player elimination. But ultimately, that is what it amounts to. And you may have players that gang up against each other and they try to block in a third player early on. But again, the game is not so long that if there is direct player elimination, somebody is going to be kicked out of the game for like an hour, just forced watching other people play. The game lasts maybe 15 minutes or so, sometimes less, when somebody says, okay, I made an early couple of mistakes, and then there's no point in finishing this, which sometimes is me saying those words. So, the game is not so long that if you're playing with 3 players, one is kicked out, and that the player is out of the game for long, because the game doesn't last long, and then you set it up again. And I found this game to be quite addictive, again, especially for my daughters. So, they liked it a lot. I started enjoying it partially because they liked it so much, and partially because, there are a couple of little strategies here and there that you can do. Ultimately, it remains very light, and it feels random, although technically there's absolutely no randomness whatsoever. Every choice is decided by a player. But as it's very hard to see ahead too much, at least you get a sense that the first couple of moves are gonna be very important, and yet you really can't see the long-term effect, so it just feels random, although technically speaking it is. So I would recommend really this game only or mainly for families, not for hardcore or committed gamers that are planning to play it a game night. Maybe you have a very casual family friend who believes in monsters and believes that the aliens have built the pyramids, and so they come visiting, and that maybe this game can appeal to them, both because of the theme and because of the simplicity, again, if they're very casual players. So Block Ness, it's not a game that I think will shine or become a staple of my game night with my adult friends when I will start having it again after the pandemic. But as a simple diversion, to play with kids, it's perfectly acceptable. And this is my assessment of this game.